Hello and welcome back to the channel again. Here is another exercise case on value-added tax. It's again on cross-border activities or what might look as such. So we have here the elevator GmbH, that is an Austrian firm, a limited company specialized on the production of elevators. And in March of this year, they get an order from a construction firm in Hamburg in Germany. They have to produce and deliver an elevator to a construction site in Munich in Germany, where the Hamburg firm has to erect a huge building. And naturally now they do this. So they carry the elevator through all the streets and small streets and big streets from Vienna in Austria, where they have their business, to the site in Munich. They deliver the elevator on the 30th of April and charge their Hamburg customers on the 7th of May as follows for their activities. An elevator, price 30,000. The transport, complicated, 10,000, and the installation 10. Then subtotal 50 net plus VAT of Germany 59,500. So amount payable 59,500. And the customer in Hamburg pays this amount within 10 days under deduction of 2% of what the Germans call Skonto, so of a discount for quick payment. So what happens? So as always, we should first try to find out what happens here. And that is that the elevator GmbH from Austria, from Vienna, sells to a German customer in Hamburg or from Hamburg an elevator. Now, the elevator and the installation of the elevator are evidently one single event. An average customer wants to have both from the same contract partner. You would never separate this, at least not under these circumstances, so it's evidently a single transaction. Now, where does the movement of the elevator end? That's in Munich. And surprise now, where does the movement of the elevator begin? In Munich, because an elevator is only finished when it's installed at the place where it has to be. Nobody buys an elevator which somebody just brings to your home, lays it down in front of your house, and then say goodbye. You will install it yourself. So what has been ordered by the customer is definitely an elevator which had to be completely installed at the place where it belonged to. And so the product which was ordered by the customer was not finished and so not existing before it was installed completely into the building in Munich. So that's why the movement of the good can only begin in Munich and ends at the same place, because that's the place of destination. So we have no cross-border movement of a good here, no rules on intra-community acquisition, and no rules on intra-community delivery. The good begins to exist only in Germany within the building where it stays, so it's without any movement. Taxability, so number one. It's a delivery, because an elevator is a tangible good and ownership changes here, it's sold. The place of delivery is to determine under paragraph 3.7. A delivery without a movement takes place at that place where the good is at the moment when ownership changes. Just to remind you of that, let's have a look that this is really true. And indeed, here you see it, 3.7. We rarely used it during the last cases. Says if the good which is delivered is not moved or dispatched during the transaction, then the place of delivery is where the good is situated at the moment when the economic ownership or the position like an owner changes. So that's the confirmation that we are right, and so we can go back to our case. That leads us to the conclusion that as all the other criteria of number one are also fulfilled, the elevator GmbH from Austria is an entrepreneur, although not a German one, but the German one is not demanded. We only need an entrepreneur. They act as such and the Act for Consideration. So everything is taxable in Germany. All the 5 conditions for taxability are fulfilled. Do we have a tax exemption? And the answer is a proud no, because especially there is no intercommunity acquisition and delivery, because as we already remarked, the good does not cross the border, but only the raw material for the production of the good, and this is something completely different. The tax base is everything which the seller gets, 10, 1, sentence 1 and 2. So the gross amount minus the VAT included therein. However, here, minus a discount of 2% for early payment. So that would be 11,900 here. No, 1,190. Oh my God. So 58,310 is really paid in the end. Now, in that amount, there is no VAT included, because later we will find out that it's not the supplier but the customer who has to pay the VAT, and then the VAT is not included but comes on top. So 58,310 is, irrespective of what the persons involved think, the net amount. Okay, so that's net amount, 58,310. Now the tax rate is 19%, so that leads us to 11,078 euro and 90. The taxpayer, well, could it be the foreign entrepreneur? And the answer is always when you have a foreigner as entrepreneur. Then that reminds us that is suspicious that there could be the reverse charge solution. So in German law, paragraph 13b, that the taxpayer could be the customer. So we have to check this, and for this reason, let's have a look into paragraph 13b. In 13b, we have first 13b first subparagraph, which says for taxable and non-tax exempt, so liable services rendered by an entrepreneur from other parts of the EU territory, for which the place of service is determined under paragraph 3a2, the tax arises at the end of the preliminary declaration period during which the services have been effectuated, and later you will find in 13b5 a statement on the taxpayer in these cases. However, 13b1 does not fit here because there is no service here but a delivery of a good, an elevator. So 13b1 can't be relevant. Let's go to 13b2. And there we see that working contracts, so contracts over the fabrication of an individually fabricated good, are regarded or are covered by 13b2 if they are produced by an entrepreneur from abroad, as far as these things are not yet covered by 13b1. So fabrication of individually produced goods or services rendered by foreigners are also covered by the reverse charge mechanism in all these cases. And the consequence of the applicability of reverse charge is then in 13b5, in the cases mentioned in paragraphs 1 and 2, the customer is a taxpayer if that customer is also an entrepreneur or a juridical person. And that seems to apply here because our customer is an enterprise from Hamburg. So 13b applies, and we have therefore to draw consequences for the taxpayer. Let's make a note. So what we can say is that 13b1 does not apply because the entrepreneur is from the rest of the EU, but there is no service in play. 13b2, that was applicable because 13b2 number 1 says I cover all the deliveries of individually fabricated products and of services not covered already under 13b1 if they are rendered by any foreign entrepreneur. So that's fulfilled here. And we also have an Austrian entrepreneur, so a foreign entrepreneur, under the criteria of 13b7. Everything which is not from the inland is foreign. And delivery of an elevator is definitively the delivery of an individual fabricated product, because it has to be fabricated individually. You can't just take a standard product and bring it to somebody. 13b5 does also apply because the customer is an entrepreneur too, so everything is fine. 13b says reverse charge mechanism applies. The taxpayer is the customer, that is the entrepreneur from Hamburg. The arisal of the tax or tax point is to be looked up in 13b2 again. That says when the invoice is issued, but at latest at the end of the first full calendar month after the delivery was made. Invoice comes in May. Delivery was made on the 30th of April, so the first full month is over at the end of May. So under both criteria, our tax has to be paid by the Hamburg customer in May. The invoice, however, which is written by the Austrian supplier, must be a net invoice. No VAT must be confirmed, because the Austrians do not have to pay VAT, so they cannot charge it and confirm it. Furthermore, the invoice should have a hint that reverse charge mechanism applies. All that is missing. However, that's how life is. Let's just look on what happens. The declaration for the transaction has to be made by the taxpayer, so by the German customer, not by the Austrian supplier. Peculiarities, things which are not covered by the regular testing scheme, yes, they exist. The Austrian firm has confirmed and charged VAT, which is simply not due under the usual rules. So they issued a wrong invoice, and you know there is a paragraph 14c which says whoever confirms VAT higher than the amount which he, she, or it owes under the law has to pay this extra exceeding amount of VAT only because they made this error. So the Austrians have to pay 9.5 in addition to what the customer has to pay under 13b. However, the Austrians may correct the error later, and if some formalities and conditions are fulfilled, then the error can be removed, so the 9.5 are then no longer due. However, that has not yet happened, so until now the 9.5 are still due. Can input tax be deducted? Yes, if a customer pays tax under paragraph 13b, this 13b tax can be deducted as input tax by the customer again immediately if the customer is entitled to deduct input tax. So if the customer doesn't use it for tax-free purposes, that's not the case here, because constructing a building is taxable and liable to tax. Concerning the Austrians, if they had some input taxes for services which they bought in Germany or raw material which they used from Germany, then they can claim input tax refund from the German authorities because they used all that stuff for taxable and liable transactions. The fact that they did not have to pay the tax but their customer doesn't make that transaction tax-free, and as the transaction is not tax-free, you have no negative consequences for the right to deduct input tax. So input tax can be deducted, and so everything's fine. The small little case is already over. I hope when you had a first glance that you could detect the traps, which were mostly consisting of paragraph 13b, and initially, naturally, which consisted also in the fact that you had to notice here that this good does not cross a border, but this good is fabricated only on the spot in Munich and remains there, so that we have a delivery without a movement of a good. Yeah, thanks for watching, and till next time.